Hey, this is Leo for Actualized.org. And in this episode, I'm going to muse a little bit about the challenges of making bold life changes. It's 2016. It's the new year. And bold changes are brewing for Actualized.org, and for me personally, and hopefully for you as well in your life. The new year, I don't know about you, but the new year for me always makes me aware of how little time I have left in my life, how little time I have left to accomplish the things I want to accomplish. And especially I've been thinking about that this year because I've been sick. You can probably hear me, I have a pretty scratchy throat, and I'm going to try to pull it through here. This is why also the video's a little bit late. It is because I had a pretty bad fever and a cold for the last week. So I've been trying to fight through that, and I'm going to work through it here. But because I was sick and I was really thinking about like life and death and what do I want to accomplish? What do I have left to accomplish in the world? And one of the things that I want to do, kind of one of my goals with Actualized.org, is to make personal development more real. To show you more behind the scenes of how I do personal development, to make it more personal. Because I think that a lot of personal development material is actually very generic, and it's almost like industrial, factory farmed personal development. And one of the ways I want to do that is to show more vulnerability as well and share more of my issues, like the shit that I deal with, so that then you can see like, oh, so he's dealing it with this way, and then, oh, I can maybe apply it in my life this way. It makes it more personal. So what I want to do in that vein is I want to discuss a problem of my own that I'm having, and you listen and you will learn from this problem, and you'll draw some lessons, some important insights for yourself. So the problem is something along the lines of this. There's going to be a time in your personal development career, so to speak, where you will intuit a need for a major realignment in your life. You'll see that you've been going down a certain track and everything's been good and it's been working, but then now you see like a new horizons open up for you. New horizon opens up. And usually the way it comes to you kind of like a fear. In your mind, it goes like this. It's like, oh shit, my current paradigm and way of doing things will not be enough to take me as far as I want to go. It will not take me far enough. I need to change my paradigm. But you've been running this paradigm for years and you're comfortable with this paradigm. You really like this paradigm. It's been working for you. And usually when this happens, you're at the height, at the peak of this paradigm. You've been using this paradigm like a tool. And so you're really afraid to let it go. What do I mean by a major realignment of your life? Well, imagine making a deep structural change to your life. I don't mean just like a habit, changing a habit or installing a new habit, or making some new friends or picking up a new hobby. I don't mean this kind of stuff or getting a new job. I mean something deeper. This is like where real change happens. For example, imagine the following. You started your own business, and now what you're going to do is you're going to quit your business and you're going to move to Japan and you're going to become a monk. Just pause for a second and actually contemplate making a change of that magnitude in your own life. This is just an example. I don't mean that this is the exact change you're going to make, but find a change that would be of equivalent magnitude that you could make in your life. What would that actually be? And just imagine, just for a few seconds, just contemplate the possibility of actually doing it, pulling the trigger on that. Not just in theory, but I mean like actually doing it tomorrow. That's what I mean by making a deep structural change in your life. These kind of turning points, as I call them, they will come up for you. And I'm noticing that a turning point like that is coming up for me. What I've noticed about these turning points, because I've had multiple of them in my career and in my life, this isn't the first one, is that they're firstly a really positive sign because they're a real sign of growth. It's a real opportunity for you to grow. But then, of course, the other thing that I noticed about them is that they're very scary. And if you've had some of these, you know how scary they are. And if you've done this little imagination exercise where you really contemplate something like quitting your business and moving to Japan to become a monk, and you really consider that seriously, that's like, man, that requires something that I don't have in me just now. I don't know if my character is strong enough for that. It's a real test of character. So anyways, that's kind of the prelude. But the thing that I'm talking about for myself, my kind of challenge and dilemma, is the following. I've been thinking about a lot of the material that I've discussed in my videos the last couple of years, what I call self-improvement advice and material. And I've just kind of been thinking about how much of it do I really know? Because I've been reading lots of books, I've been going to lots of seminars and workshops and this and that, and of course practicing it all. So I'm not just doing theory, I'm also practicing it. But just like, if you've watched enough of my material, you give me a guess. What would you think I know? How much do you think I know of this material in the self-help field? What would you say, like 80%, 50%, 20%, 10%? What would you think? So I was thinking about this, and kind of like in my own estimation, what I feel like I know, really know, is less than 1%. And that gives me a deep pause, because what I'm realizing as I study more and more self-improvement material, and I try to actually master it, not just know it intellectually, but actually master it in my life, I realize that my mastery of this material is inadequate, like really inadequate. Not for you, not for teaching you, not for talking about it, but just personally for me. Because what I'm really after is like truth and real self-mastery. Not just self-mastery in words, not just pretty sayings, not just some techniques and a little meditation habit here and something there, but like real, true, deep self-mastery. And when I see people who have that kind of self-mastery, these are people who are really hardcore people. These are not your ordinary self-help guys. These are not your ordinary Tony Robbins and self-help gurus. They're not. They're really hardcore guys who have dedicated their whole lives to this path. So the dilemma for me is choosing now between achievement on the one hand and truth and self-mastery on the other. And for the last 3 years or so, I've really been working on the success of Actualized.org, my own personal success and success in helping you guys. And to me, that was kind of about truth, but it was a lot about achievement. It was mostly about success and achievement. And that success, after about 3 years of hard work, it's been won, I can say. It's been won. So I've kind of exceeded my original expectations and my original wildest dreams, actually. And that's been real good. It's been real good. I've been really pleased with that. But the problem is, of course, that you always want more. And the problem with success is that whenever you're getting success, there's always like more success on the horizon that comes up and more opportunities that come up. And in fact, one of the challenges I'm facing now is like there's so many opportunities, I get easily distracted by all the opportunities. I have to say no a lot. Most opportunities I have to say no to. And success is kind of like luring me for more and more and more. And this is taking me away from really the deep self-mastery work, the inner work that I got to do. And so on the one hand, success is kind of luring me. On the other hand, truth and self-mastery is luring me. Imagine that someone came in to your room and plopped a giant suitcase on your desk and opened it, and it was filled with millions of dollars. And you look at that person, you say, no, thank you. And you turn your back on that person, and you just go back to meditating, or you go back to writing in your journal, or you go back to reading your book, or whatever else you were doing. That's kind of like what it feels like for me at this point. This is kind of what I've been thinking about over the last week as I was in a in a delirium of fever and in this nasty cold that I've been fighting through. Because I have a lot of ideas for how to expand Actualized.org, but what I'm recognizing is how sneaky of a distraction this is, because each new expansion that I plan, each new project, each new endeavor, each new product or each new course or whatever, even though I really believe in these products and courses and so forth, I think they're really necessary and important. They'll help a lot of people. I also see that really they're a distraction, in a sense, from me doing the really deep work that I got to be doing. And my inner wisdom, my inner compass knows that this isn't right. And that the proper focus for me is on self-transcendence, on enlightenment, on truth, and on self-mastery. To really master this material on a very deep level. And then to teach from that point, from that position. That would be the ideal. The problem with this, of course, is that it requires a withdrawal. It requires a saying no to achievement, no to success, sacrificing the money and so forth. And that's real difficult, because success and achievement has kind of been my bread and butter for the last, 6, 7 years or so. That's kind of like what I've been doing, what I've been pursuing. Makes sense. It's comfortable. I'm good at it. It's easy, right? It's not that easy, but it's something that I know how to do. And especially when you start to get good at something, it's like, well, you want to keep doing it. You don't want to change and kind of go back to ground zero, start from scratch. It's kind of painful. Seems like a step backwards. And this is where the paradigm shift is required, because what I'm seeing is that my bread and butter and the stuff that I'm good at and this achievement stuff, it won't ultimately get me to where I want to go. And that if I continue down this course for long enough, I'm going to regret this decision that I made in my life. And my eye keeps going towards the greater vision. And the greater vision, I was really inspired this year when I read Gandhi's autobiography. Really inspired by how Gandhi lived his life. And what inspired me really about him is the integrity with which he lived his life. Like, he was a leader who led from the very front. Not from the back, but from the very front, which is a very rare thing. It's amazing how rare such a quality is. And I'm thinking about, how do I take my life and I engineer it in such a way where it reflects that kind of way of life? It's a whole lifestyle. Like, you have to commit yourself to this. This is not something you do on a whim. And this is not something you can really turn your back on. And this is not something you can turn on one day and then turn off the next day when it's not convenient for you. Like Gandhi's whole life, you should read his autobiography. It's incredible. It's a little dry at first, so slow to start. But if you read it in its entirety, it'll blow you away with what this man did. This is not fiction. He actually did this. He dedicated his entire life to public service. Incredible. And the way in which he did it is even more incredible. So I won't go into all those details, maybe another episode. But I was really inspired by this, and I'm trying to think of how I can put my life into that kind of mold and make Actualized.org something reflecting a bit of that. And I'm not talking about like influencing hundreds of millions of people. Like, it's not about mass scale. It's about the quality with which you do it. It's about the integrity with which you do it. It's also about the kind of like the commitment that's there. And I don't mean that I want to do exactly what Gandhi did. I'm just using that kind of as an analogy for what I want to do in my own way. And for me, what that means is turning inwards and finding the truth and finding the self-mastery that I'm looking for. And then perhaps impacting others with that wisdom. And maybe not. I don't know. See, that's one of the fears I have and one of the risks that I run. So there's a whole list of risks and fears that I have. What about regret? Will I regret this kind of decision? What if I miss my chance of success? What if I regret the fact that I didn't grab success when I had it in my hands? Because success can be a point that's difficult to get to. It's a lot of times you spend 3 or 5 years really struggling to get successful, and then finally you're at this point where, okay, finally I'm at the point where now I can kind of relax a little bit and still success comes to me. And it's like, that's what I've been dreaming of. But now it's like, no, you got to climb another mountain, climb a whole new mountain now. Or the risk of not wanting to help anyone anymore. I don't even know what my desires and motivations will be like, and how my life purpose will change and evolve as I get into the deeper truths. That's something I can't even anticipate, really. Probably I'll still want to influence people, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just want to retreat into a cave and just meditate all day. I don't know. So that's one unknown that I'm dealing with. Also, things like sacrificing material comforts, sacrificing sex, sacrificing relationships, sacrificing vacations, sacrificing travel and fun, and sacrificing food, and like all this kind of stuff that's really nice that you kind of like been dreaming of for the last 5 years because you've been working real hard. It's like, well, I'm working because I'll get all these nice juicy bonuses at the end of the journey. And now it's like, well, I have to give up those juicy bonuses to go even higher on a even higher journey. Maybe. I don't necessarily need to give them up, but that's something that's a fear of mine. And then, of course, there's fears like, well, how will people judge me? What will people think of me? What about my old obligations? What about my obligations to my viewers? What about my obligations to my business? What about obligations to my customers? What about obligations to my family and people who are close to me? And then, of course, probably the ultimate fear is like, what if I ruin my life with such a decision? So those are some of the thoughts that are kind of swirling through my mind. Just wanted to share them because not that you're facing this exact same issue in your life, but it shows you kind of like what's involved with making a paradigm change. And the fact that it's really scary is the important part. And it's really easy to get stuck. And it's really easy to just kind of delay and to say, oh, you know what, I'll just kind of put this on the back burner for another year. Oh, I can do it next year and the next year, and I can do it the next year, and I can do it after this and after that, and after my success and after my relation. I can do it and just push it off and off and off and off and off. And that's kind of like what I've already been doing for the last year. And it's been fine. I can keep doing that for a little while. But ultimately, like I know deep down inside that this track of achievement-focused life, an achievement-focused lifestyle on success and on business, this is ultimately not going to fulfill me. It's already not fulfilling me. It's never really fulfilled me. It doesn't work. It won't fulfill you either. If you think that it'll fulfill you, something like that will fulfill you, it won't. That's just a trick of your mind, which is enough to motivate you now for a little while, for the next 5 or 10 years. Fine, use that. But just realize that it won't fulfill you forever. Sorry to pop your bubble. And so what's really scary in life is when you realize these things and then you're like, well, shit, this means I got to change a lot of structural things in my life. Not just little things, but big, major things. How I relate to people, how I relate to society, how I relate to culture, how I relate to entertainment, how I relate to food, how I relate to fitness, how I relate to sex, how I relate to business, how I relate to money, how I relate to happiness. And what has to happen is that, like, a part of you has to die. On this hero's journey that you're on, part of the hero has to die so that he gets purified and pushed forward. It's a purification process. And in this purification process, the impurities get burned out of you. But, the fire does burn, and it does hurt sometimes. And it's scary to stick your hand in the fire and to keep sticking your hand in the fire consciously, deliberately, intentionally. That's what was so inspiring about Gandhi, is that he did that consciously, intentionally, for almost the entirety of his life. Fearlessly, courageously, incredible man. Really tough to do. Really rare. It's surprisingly rare, especially in the self-help field. It's very rare. Because here's the standard self-help track. You become the self-help guru. You write a couple of books. You become a famous author. You get your name out there. You get a lot of subscribers. People know you. You develop a practice. You then get some people working under you. Develop a little company. You get a little product out there. You get a little course. You get a little this, a little that. You do a radio show. You do a TV show. You do this. Everybody knows you. And all of a sudden, you're like this big guru. No one could even remember the time where nobody knew you. And then, you're so successful and you just keep doing that for the rest of your life. And you just keep milking that cow for the rest of your life. That's the standard self-help business model. But, that's a pretty shallow model. Doesn't strike me as having a lot of integrity. Not if you're really learning the self-help principles that I'm talking about every week. You can't really live that kind of lifestyle, not for very long. I mean, that's a phase you can go through, but then you have to grow out of it. You can't do the whole Tony Robbins thing for decade after decade after decade. Like, what's the point? Like, earning tens of millions of dollars to buy yourself like castles and mansions and helicopters and shit. Like, what? This is all quite shallow. So, like, my inner intuition knows that my life can't be about this, and that really the focus has to really change. It has to stop being me. Up to this point, my focus in my life, even though I do work that impacts lots of people, and I like to tell myself that, I have a life purpose, which is all about impacting people and so forth, and I do that, but really my work is about me, and my life is about me. And that has to change. And that's really hard to change. And paradoxically, what this means is to take the focus off of me. Paradoxically, you think like, well, okay, Leo, fine, go become a saint or something. But see, what it actually looks like on the surface when I do that is paradoxically, I have to turn inward to do that. I have to find my own truth. I have to find enlightenment. I have to develop the self-mastery that I need. And only then can I turn back outward and make my life about other, like really about other. Like Gandhi really made his life about other. Now, he wasn't even enlightened, at least not when he started. I don't know if he ever even became enlightened. I doubt that. But that makes it even more incredible that he was able to do it. Even more incredible. So the reason I'm talking about this is because I want to give you kind of a preview. First of all, like I said, I want to give you kind of a more vulnerable take on personal development. So I'm sharing a challenge that I'm facing. Hopefully you can relate to this challenge, because I'm sure that you can see the connection from this challenge to a lot of your challenges. I'm going to talk about your challenges here in a second. But here's something I want to kind of draw your attention to, is that this is what it looks like. These are the challenges of evolving up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is what we're really talking about here. If you watch my episode about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how to use it to self-actualize, if not, go watch that one. That's important. An important one for you to watch. But you basically got this pyramid with these different hierarchies of different needs, and you're ascending up these ladders or these levels, these stages. And the problem is that it's really easy to get stuck at a stage, especially once you get a little higher, and a little higher, and then you kind of just peter out. A lot of really successful people, a lot of really smart and brilliant people who would otherwise go on to really make a high consciousness, profound impact in the world, they get stuck somewhere in the middle of the pyramid. They don't go to the very, very top. What I'm talking about here is how to get to the very top. Now, maybe that's not the challenge you're facing right now. Maybe right now you're lower, you're on a lower level and you're not quite shooting for the top yet. That's cool. That might be 5 or 10 or 20 years away for you right now. But you know what? You're still going to be facing the same basic issue, no matter what level you're at, and you're trying to ascend to the next level. You're going to be facing similar types of issues, right? You have to let go of certain things. You have to let go of old ways of doing things, and then you have to accept new ways that are kind of scary and foreign to you. So this is how this connects back to your life. You're probably wondering, okay, well, what does all this mean for me, Leo? Well, the bottom line is that as you grow, you will face these same similar kinds of turning points. Your career might be facing a turning point. Your family situation might be facing a turning point. A relationship in your life might be facing a similar turning point. Your relationship to society might be facing a turning point, or to money, or to business, or to health. These turning points will happen to you, and they've probably already happened to you. They've certainly happened to me. This is not my first, like I said. I've had turning points back in college, turning points in high school, turning points in my first job and in my first business. These are really crucial points. I feel like my biggest growth has come from making wise decisions on these turning points and actually making a decision. Because see, here's the real deceptive part about this, is that if you don't make a conscious decision at some point, what'll happen is you'll just kind of play the default position. And the default position is just keeping your status quo. And this is exactly what people do, is they just keep their status quo and just keep at it, avoid making any decisions. And then what happens is that eventually they die. Your life runs out. It runs out really fast, a lot faster than you think. If you're a little older, you know what I'm talking about. If you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you know what I'm talking about. If you're still in your teens or 20s, you don't know what I'm talking about yet. But when you turn 30, you're really going to feel it. I turned 30 this year. So the point here is that you're going to be facing these turning points, and what you need to be doing is you need to be learning how to listen to your inner wisdom and not putting off these decisions for too long and making the bold choices, right? The hero, to get on the hero's journey, the first thing he has to do is he has to do what's called accepting the call. The hero is presented with a call. The question is, will he take it or not? The true hero always accepts the call, with resistance, but he accepts it in the end. That's what puts him on the journey. That's what makes him a hero. The non-hero, the ordinary guy, what he does is he has too much resistance. He gives into the resistance. He stalls. He has excuses. He's very comfortable. He says he'll do it tomorrow or next year, or he's got a family obligation, or whatever his reasons are. That's really the first distinguishing characteristic of a hero and an ordinary person. So the hero is really one who is in tune with his inner wisdom, even though there's resistance. It's not easy for the hero. A classic thing you see in movies when you see a hero's journey paradigm being used, like in Star Wars, for example, is you see the hero is reluctant. He's always reluctant. He doesn't just eagerly accept the call. You would wonder, like, well, why wouldn't the hero just want to go on a grand, cool adventure? Why doesn't Luke just want to go fly out into space and, go to the Death Star and destroy bad guys? Why doesn't he want to do all this? Well, because think about how it actually plays out in real life. In a movie, it's all fun and games. But in real life, when it's your balls on the line, how does it actually play out? Imagine you're in his situation. You got to abandon your home, your relatives, your friends, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever you got, your children. You got to abandon and leave all that and go off on some crazy adventure. It doesn't seem like an adventure. It seems like some ridiculous cockamamie scheme that people will judge you for, that has a high failure rate and a lot of risk and potentially little reward, and that you got to make it work somehow. And this is something you've never done before, something you've never attempted before, will require skills you don't even know how to acquire. And that's something you have to say yes to. Of course you're going to say no. Almost everybody says no. Because what people do is they hold on to the good at the cost of the great. And so one of the things you got to learn here, if you really want to self-actualize, and you really want to live to your full potential in life, is you have to learn how to let go of the good for the sake of the great. At these crucial turning points in your life, you're not going to have a lot of these turning points. You might have 4, 6, maybe 10 of them in your whole life. I've probably had 3 or 4 major turning points, and I'm 30 right now. So that tells me that I'll probably have another 3 or 4 in the next 30 years, right? So in my whole life, if I live past 60, that'll probably be 10 turning points maximum. And I think the ones that you make when you're young, when you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, those are going to be the most important ones. Because once you're in your 50s and 60s, let's face it, you don't have that much time left. You don't. And you've already locked in a lot of stuff with those earlier turning points that you've either stalled on or you made some kind of decision on. So it's really important that you learn how to go for the greater vision, the vision of what you really could be, of what your full potential is, of what's really possible for you. Not just a settling for good, but going for like something that will inspire others when they see it. And that's something that's really hard to find. It's really hard to find people even discussing these issues in society, in culture, in the media, in your family. Who discusses this stuff? Even in self-help books, this stuff is rarely discussed. It's discussed it's like lip service only. It's lip service only. Because even the people that are writing these books and doing these seminars, I don't see them even doing it. Most of them don't do it. So how can they discuss it? You have to prepare yourself for making radical changes in your life that are going to seem crazy. They're going to seem crazy, especially to people around you that aren't inside your head and aren't thinking like you and don't have connection to that inner wisdom that you've got. But they're even going to seem crazy to you. They're going to seem very counterintuitive to you and to others around you. Is it going to seem like you're taking a step backwards? When in fact, you know you're taking a step forwards. But I mean, you know how it works. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward kind of deal. And sometimes it's like 2 steps forward and then 3 steps backward. But then in a few years, a giant leap of 10 steps forward. Or you just completely jump to a whole new level, a whole new dimension, a whole new playing field. And that's what these paradigm shifts, these turning points can do for you. It's not just an incremental, like, couple of steps ahead. What you're really doing is you're jumping to a whole new level. You're going from the little leagues to the giant leagues to the big leagues. So you're going to have to be prepared to make these kind of radical changes. And yet, and here's the real important part, make sure you listen to this part right here. And yet, you balance it with responsible action and wisdom. So I'm not telling you here that what you do is you just go take some crazy risk, you just start some crazy, ridiculous business idea that everyone tells you will never work, and you just go say, screw the statistics, screw the probabilities, I'm just going to do it. That's not what I'm telling you. I'm saying you make radical changes that your inner wisdom is telling you you need to make, but you balance this with a lot of responsibility and wisdom, deep wisdom, not rashness, not impulsiveness. It's not like, oh, okay, so I should just go quit school, quit college, divorce my wife. No. I'm talking about something a lot deeper here. When you make one of these important turning point decisions, this is a highly conscious act. It's not a rash or an impulsive action. Highly conscious. You're being pulled by something really, you might say spiritual inside you is pulling you. Your life purpose, your passion, your soul, whatever you want to call it, something inside you is pulling you. It's like, I know I need to do this. I know this is right for me. That was the case for me I'm thinking right now about 3 or 4 major turning points in my life up to now, where that was the case, where I had this kind of tug of war between the conventional and then like between my gut telling me, I know I got to do this. I know this is right. I know this will pay off, even though it doesn't seem like it will right now. Even though it seems kind of crazy. And the way it's usually worked for me is I've resisted it and I've denied it, and it's been real painful and scary, and a lot of frustration comes with it, and a lot of emotional turmoil. This is the hero coping with accepting the call. And then what I said is I finally said, you know what? Fuck it, I got to do it. And then one way or another, I just did it. And sometimes what happens is I'm pushed by some external factor, and sometimes it's just me making the decision. You know, it can vary. But I think that a lot of where I am today has to do with the fact that I have followed through on those turning points where I easily could have not, where I easily could have delayed, where I could have easily distracted myself with games or entertainment or sex or relationships or whatever else, with money, and distracted myself, and then I would not be where I am today. And it's really amazing. It's almost like a deja vu moment. I almost feel like I'm back in college, in my first 2 years of college, because I was facing the same kind of thing in college, where it's like I knew that the major I selected when I started, which was engineering, that it just wasn't right for me. But I was so committed to it, and then, you know, I knew that there was other passion I had to follow, which was game design, and I was really uncertain about how to make that switch, and I thought I would, you know, lose a lot of time and all this investment that I made into engineering. But then I finally did make the switch, and it was like the same situation that I'm facing now with Actualized.org. I'm at the point with Actualized.org where I've considered just completely shutting it down and saying like, well, okay, what if no more videos? What if I just go and like live in a cabin for the next 5 years and just enlighten the shit out of myself and then see what happens? And if I still want to come back and do something publicly, I will, if I have that opportunity. And maybe I won't even want to do anything publicly, and my life will just go some crazy direction. Like, that's something I've considered and I'm considering right now. But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, I do have this great opportunity that I want to let go of. How do I keep both? And you might say, well, can't you do both? And that's kind of what I've been trying to do for the last year. And it's real challenging. In reality, what happens is that I'm really hedging my bets. And when I hedge my bets, I know that I'm not really serving that deep inner wisdom that I have. I'm not really serving my full life purpose. So how do I resolve this? I don't know yet. It's an open question. We'll see how it goes. But either way, bold changes will be happening for Actualized.org, for me, and I hope for you too. Every new year, I plan new big changes. This is how you get big results with self-improvement. Habits are nice, little exercises and techniques are good. Those are all great, but then you do also want to consider the big picture. What's the big picture strategy of what you're doing? Do you have a life purpose? Are you following it? Are you aligned with it? How are you not aligned with it? How could you become more aligned with it? What big step could you take to do that? And in the end, you got to always understand that your character will be tested if you're on this path. The hero always gets tested. That's what constitutes the hero's journey, is the tests and the obstacles that he has to overcome on the way. So if you're dealing with emotional turmoil and you're suffering and you're ambivalent, you don't know how to decide, and you got all this kind of angst and frustration there, then, you know, I know what that's like. I've been there a lot, but that's kind of like the emotional labor that we have to pay as heroes on our journeys to get to where we ultimately want to be, which is to actualize our full potential. I want to leave on one final note, which is the reminder that the most precious commodity that you have is your sense of death. if you are sensitive to the fact that you will be dead very soon, it will happen very soon, and it'll seem like it's happening in the blink of an eye. Your life will pass before you. Even if you live to 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, it'll still seem like the blink of an eye. If you can be conscious of that as you're hitting these turning points, these potential turning points, that's what's going to activate that inner wisdom in you. And that's what's been activating that inner wisdom in me, because I was sick, and I like being sick in a twisted, sick kind of way, even though it's terrible. But if you like really get a bad cold and a bad fever, where you're lying there on the bed or on the couch, and you feel like you might not even live through the night, it's so bad, you really get this kind of clarifying effect, where a lot of petty shit in your mind falls away, because you get this sense of impending death, and you see like everything put in its proper priority. And then what happens is that you kind of come out of that fever, and then all of a sudden, 2 days later, you're back in the grind, you're back in the 9 to 5 schedule, and it's all forgotten, just like a dream. So here's the key. If you really want to fulfill your potential, then you have to turn that dream into something you're thinking about during the day. When you get that kind of a sense of clarity when you're sick and you have a fever, you have to keep that sense of clarity during the day, when you're back at work, when you're back at home, when you're back with your family. Or for example, if you go on a retreat, you go on a meditation retreat and everything's going great there, and you have all these epiphanies, you want to change your life around, you should be living this way and that way, and then you get back home and 5 days later you've forgotten about all of it and your life is exactly the same as it was. Well, see, what happened is you were conscious for a brief moment, but then you fell back asleep. There was a potential turning point, but then since you decided to do nothing, the turning point vanished. And sometimes a turning point can vanish in as little as 5 days. In as little as a week or a month or a year, it'll vanish. These turning points, they don't usually stay open for very long. So be mindful of that. Remember how important it is to be sensitive of your impending death, because it's coming, and it's coming fast. All right, I'll leave you there. This is Leo. I'm signing off. Go ahead, post me your comments down below. Please click the like button for me. Share this video with a friend. And lastly, come sign up to Actualized.org. Check out Actualized.org. I have a newsletter there. It's a free newsletter. I release new content about how to self-actualize, how to follow your hero's journey, how to get on track with your hero's journey and stay on track with your hero's journey, and not get distracted by all the distractions that society offers you. Very easy to get distracted. It's a free newsletter. Sign up. Check out my life purpose course. That can also help you a lot, especially if you're into this topic. I discuss so many important and nuanced and detailed topics about life purpose in the life purpose course that I could never have enough time to talk about here. Over 25 hours of content. You might want to check that out. But anyways, yeah, stay tuned, because I'm going to be bringing you more insights into how to actually make this real. Because I'm doing it myself. We'll see what I decide and how I go and how Actualized.org goes. But for now, we're still forging ahead, and I look forward to having you sign up and seeing you real soon.